wonderful to see all of you for our kickoff meeting, and you're at the start of our 46th year of Friends sponsoring Book Sandwiched In. I am so happy to see all of you, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it for these many years that I've been able to do it. Let me tell you, Book Sandwiched In is an act of reading and love on the part of the team. This is not a one-person deal. I just want to let you know who reads over 32 books during the season to whittle it down to 9, who discusses it, who debates it, how we get to consensus, how we were standing, and all friends. They are the best team I have ever worked with. And believe me, I've worked on many. I'm a product of the city school district. I'm a survivor. So, Gina Viviani is the library manager that we work with. She's in charge of the young adult program and circulation services. If you ever call her number, there's a whole minute of what she does. She's absolutely fabulous. And the team is myself, I'm Linda Rapkin, and Izzy Coons, Shirley Jacobson, Jackie Liebman, Jackie Lipschitz, Hinda Miller, Diane Reish, Cindy Stewart, and Vodachuk. And they're all amazing readers and human beings and very smart, so we have lively discussions about books. When I was asked to join this team over a decade ago, I thought, it's like another book club. I belong to several book clubs. Oh no, this is a debate society. It's really, really cool and a lot of fun and a lot of reading. So, our next one, because I know when Karen is done, you will all be racing for the door, so let me tell you, because you'll be hungry. The next one is November 2nd. The book is Horse by Geraldine Brooks, and our reviewer is Athene Goldstein. She's a teacher and a book discussion leader. You might have heard her before. It'll be a wonderful session also. Now to what we're doing today, Lessons in Chemistry. When we first read it over a year ago, when it first came out, I was super excited, and I really lobbied hard for this book because some people said that it'll be so old by the time you do it. Well, I'm older too, and I have a daughter in the working world, and maybe you have daughters and grandchildren, and from the females I speak to, life isn't so easy in the working world. Things may not be the same they were in the 59 and 60 when this book was set, but we've had Me Too. We've had a lot of things going on. So when I was thinking of, we were thinking of a speaker, immediately Judge Morris came to my head. She's done it all, seen it all, and in my book she knows it all. So there we go. I could spend an hour extolling her accomplishments, her virtues, and everything wonderful, but I'm going to just give you the highlights because we want to get on to the book. By the way, we will leave the last 10 minutes of the book for Q&A. So at 10 to 1, we'll start Q&A. So Karen Morris, we're so lucky. She's been our Brighton Town Justice since 1994. She's a professor of law at Monroe Community College. She's the author of 3 books. She's a member of 5 professional organizations. There's more. She's an active participant in at least 4 community activities, included in her service as board member of various community organizations. As an avocation, she's a magician, and I think she performs magic not only in the courtroom, but in other places as well. We are very fortunate that Karen returns when asked, pleaded back graciously to do these reviews for us. She really is a gift to Book Sandwiched In. So, it's all yours, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you said that the town was lucky. I feel that I'm the one that's lucky that you have sent me back to be judge for many years, 29 in total, which is astounding to me. I'm very grateful and very honored for that. I'm also very grateful that this book survived the debate and the give and take and that you advocated for it. I think that we all loved this book. And I think part of the reason that we love it is that we identify with the indignities that Elizabeth Zott endured and we applaud her for her unyielding refusal to go along to get along. She was brassy, blunt, ballsy. She says it like it is, and she suffers no fools. And I think we all find that appealing. An example, Harriet, the neighbor who assists in taking care of Elizabeth Zott's daughter, said to Elizabeth, "You must watch Madeline. I found her crawling into the washing machine yesterday." And Elizabeth Zott responds, "Don't worry, I never start a load without checking first." Such a great comeback. So let me set the scene. As was mentioned, this takes place in the 50s and early 60s. There are numerous references in the book to, scattered really throughout the book, as to what things were like then. So we had seat-beltless cars. Cars did not have seat belts, and we never thought that that was an issue. But what a wonderful invention seat belts are, and how studies show when we wear those seat belts, if we're in an accident, we're so much, we're likely to survive the accident and survive it so much better than if we don't have that seat belt. Vice President was Lyndon Johnson, who in the book watched Elizabeth Zott's show, Supper at 6. There was an assumption in the workplace that any woman who was around was a secretary. Hastings, the boss at Hastings, and Elizabeth Zott's professor, her advisor for her master's thesis, and Frask's boss, all feeling entitled to demean women. And those of us who worked at that time, there seemed to be a freedom among men to take advantage of women in a sexual way, either advantage in terms of engaging them in sex or demeaning them with sexual innuendos, jokes, and comments. The professors often took credit for student work, and sometimes without any consequence. Jack LaLanne was the famous TV fitness guru at the time. Interesting. I do a lot of my reading on the audio, and the person who read the audio apparently was younger, didn't know Jack LaLanne, and pronounced it as Jack LaLanne. and he comes up maybe 5 or 6 times, so each time I thought, no, that's Jack LaLanne. Mr. Ed the Talking Horse was referenced. That was a big show at the time. The expression, "why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free," referring to women who lived with and were intimate with their partners before marriage. Today, probably few people would think about getting married without having some trial living together, but back then it was clearly a taboo. Billy Graham was referenced. You may remember Elizabeth Zott's mother allegedly dated Billy Graham. He was big in the day. Elizabeth Zott's mother advised her, when you get married, get the biggest diamond that you can. That way, if it doesn't work out, you can sell the diamond. And underlying that advice was the idea that women were not in great numbers in the workforce, and often were reliant on men financially, which was going to be lost, of course, if there was a divorce. Reliance on Dr. Spock. 50 million Dr. Spock books about raising children were sold. He was identified as one of the 10 most influential people of the 20th century. Here's an interesting fact that you might not have known, but it makes sense how he finds his way in the book. He won a gold medal during the 1924 Olympics for, who can guess? Rowing. Which, of course, for those of you who haven't read it, plays big. Rowing is a sport that plays big in the book. So those were some of the fun connections with the time period. an exchange that sums up much of the conflicting sentiments about women's role in the universe during the 50s and 60s, I think is captured in this exchange. So Elizabeth Stott was on the air. She's doing her supper at 6, and she says, next, apply a liberal amount of sodium chloride. And Walter, who is her boss and friend, and is off to the side, is talking with, I think it was the makeup artist, and he's whispering, he said, would it kill her to just say salt? Would it? And the makeup artist says, I like how she uses sciencey words. It makes me feel, I don't know, capable. And Walter says, capable, capable. What happened to wanting to feel slim and beautiful? That really sums up so much of the friction, the tension between women and men in this book. The book gives us important life lessons, and these are some that I extracted. Friendship requires sacrifice, and I think about the incident with Madeline giving Amanda her lunch, and there was a comment about friendship requires sacrifice. Friendship is such an important phenomenon in our lives, and indeed, it's not all enjoyment. There is sacrifice that's part of the process. I loved her sign off from the show. Children, set the table. Your mother needs a moment to herself. The lesson being that, hey, moms work hard. They're entitled to some time on their own. And kids, you have to fill in those times and do your share. Great life lesson. This was Calvin said to Elizabeth, don't work the system, outsmart it. And I thought, and certainly if anybody was going to do that, Elizabeth has the fortitude to do that. But a great lesson. And then the last one is follow your dreams, it's never too late. And that came from Elizabeth at the end of her show, and Minister Wakely also gave that advice. So those were some lovely, I thought, life lessons from the book. I then, in thinking about what I might comment on, I was very impressed with the collection of issues that were embedded into the storyline. Issues that, many of which remain issues today. Some were legitimately issues of the time in the 50s, and I think some she borrowed from today and wove into the story. So I'm going to address a number of these issues and bring us forward. I'll cite where it is in the book and a little about the issue and what the status is today. So one of the issues was stereotypes. Amanda's dad excused his poor lunch preparation because he was divorced and there wasn't a mother. This stereotype that dads don't make good moms. Well, Dad certainly fought against that, particularly in the area of custody. We saw fathers' rights movements, and we saw a change in custody laws from automatically assuming that the mom is the better parent to both male and female parents, if there's a male and a female, standing equally in the eyes of the law. The stereotype that women in the workplace were secretaries. So Elizabeth was mistaken for secretary, Frask was, Calvin, I think about the issue when very, very early part of the book, where Elizabeth goes to Calvin's lab and is seeking beakers. And he thinks she's a secretary and says, basically get out of here and have your boss call me. I think that we have progressed greatly in that regard. Women are prevalent in virtually every field. A patriarchal society, that women are less in every way was the message of the time. Less capable, less intelligent, less inventive, and again, we have progressed greatly. Bosses have the right to take sexual liberties with women who work for them. Women are sexual beings, not equal contributors on the job. That was a stereotype. Now, of course, we have laws against sexual harassment. there have been very significant recoveries against companies that were found to have been liable for sexual harassment. So those are some of the stereotypes, and I'll talk a little more about sexual harassment, but going sort of in order of the stories. An issue that arose was orphanages. Calvin, of course, grew up in an orphanage. He had a very unhappy experience there, and of course we all hated the fundraiser for the orphanage, who made untruthful statements, very damning for, turns out, the mother of Calvin, and very damning for Calvin about Calvin's status at the orphanage and those compromises, those lies were made in order to extract money from this man who was inquiring about Calvin. Very unfair, and orphanages at the time have generated unhappy memories in numerous people now grown who were, of course, youngsters at the time. Orphanages were prevalent. Kids got there, many parents, some were mothers who had lost their spouse and so were unable, because they were reliant on the financial well-being of their spouse, were unable to care for the child. Sometimes parents had died. Sometimes there was illness in the family, inadequate employment. Some were children of war widows or unmarried women who didn't want to proclaim that they had a child out of wedlock, and so, in effect, hid the child. There were parents who were immigrants without skills to earn a living in this country. Many placed their kids in the orphanage with the hope that their circumstances would change and they would be able to reclaim the child. Sometimes that happened and sometimes not. In the earlier days, these were large institutions. They were for one generation, one gender only, and often were age limited, so that if the child was in the orphanage, in orphanage care for many years, he or she would be transferred from one orphanage to another as they aged out of each one. Initially, there were many that were religion-related and they were private, and getting money to fund them was difficult, and that led to some of the conditions being substandard at some of these orphanages. There then came a time where the thought was that kids are much better served with families and something more akin to a family life. So they developed cottages where, rather than lots of kids living together, there were smaller numbers who lived together, and the idea of a house mother was adopted, so that there was some more focused attention on each child. Then as a society, we moved more towards thinking foster care was the answer, and having kids be assigned on a one-on-one with a family, which has issues but also can work very well. There was also an effort in this country to help keep the kids in the families even when families didn't have the money, and that was under the New Deal. There was social welfare legislation which provided some income support for families and lessened the need for orphanages. So Aid for Dependent Children in 1935 helped to get money towards families that might otherwise have placed their kids in these orphanages. And food stamps also was an aid. So today, foster care is much more the focus. There still are some orphanages, some are called children's homes, residential treatment homes, group care facilities, They operate as de facto orphanages, though we don't call them that. And of course, we hope every child gets all of the care and attention that he or she needs. Another issue, defund police. So you may remember that Calvin was out for a run. Unfortunately, it was his last run. He sees a newsstand, and the headlines on the paper was, "City budgets hit rock bottom. Police and fire services at risk." The raises for police and fighters were no longer possible for the city, and the article referenced that tune-ups, oil changes, brake relining, and light bulb changes were discouraged and possibly not provided to those police vehicles, and the police cars were not inspected. And there was promoted in the town, do more with less. So this, I think, is our author touching on the defund police movement, which was triggered by the murder of George Floyd on May 25th of 2020. He was in police custody. He was pinned to the ground by a police officer, and his famous line, "I can't breathe." He was killed as 3 other officers looked on. A justified national outrage resulted from that. The key police officer involved, Derek Chauvin, is now serving 21 years, and the other 2 are serving between 3 and 5 years in prison. In Rochester, of course, we had the unfortunate circumstance of Daniel Prude. He was suffering a mental illness episode. Police responded with force, and he also, Prude, was killed. In summer of 2020, we had this defund the police. It became a rallying cry for many progressive folks. And of course, defunding the police is an unrealistic demand, but it was seen as an emotional response to police misconduct. It evidenced a search and a longing for more equal protection, more accountability and transparency on the part of police, and a different way of handling mental health episodes. There was indeed an advocacy for reallocation of resources to trained mental health workers to reduce unnecessary violent encounters between police and citizens. This whole effort has led to important initiatives. Police in most localities, including all of Rochester, and Brighton was actually in the forefront, now wear body cameras, so that what happens, their encounters, a police encounter with people is all recorded, and that video is available, so that those in judgment are not reliant on what the police officer says and what, if the victim is still alive, what a victim might say or a defendant might say. The video speaks loudly. The Police Accountability Board in Rochester, though certainly it's had its issues, the concept of oversight of how police do their job was consistent with the great concerns that arose from some of these incidents. Implicit bias training. This is a very important area. Many of us don't realize, but we carry with us some implicit biases, prejudices, reactions to people in a certain way. That's now part of police training. Anybody who's ever been a juror, there is, before you can sit as a juror, a video that you must watch. It might be 10 minutes that addresses very well, I think, implicit bias, how we can be more aware when it's happening to us and overcome it and not act on it. Also, another outcome of this concern about defunding police is the response teams to incidents that involve mental health episodes as opposed to strictly criminal episodes. Rochester has such a response team. There is a law before bill before the legislature called Daniel's Law in honor of Daniel Prude. It's pending in New York. It calls for mental health professionals rather than police responding to mental health crises. Just within the last week, there was a community event to promote both information about this and encouragement to our legislators to pass it. But Rochester has initiated on its own a number of response teams that include, that are on call and include mental health professionals to either accompany the police or go ahead of police to see what the circumstance is and address the matter as a mental health issue as opposed to a criminal punitive issue. Another issue that our author touches on is gays and suicide. So Elizabeth Stott's brother committed suicide, and he did that because he was gay. His father told him that God hated him, that he, the brother, was an aberration because he was gay, and he didn't deserve to live. And the brother, who was very close to Elizabeth, hanged himself. He hanged himself, whatever that verb is. That's what he did. It's still hard, I think, in today's society to be an LGBTQ plus person. We've seen some states being very conservative on this issue. Don't say gay in Florida. Some limitations exist on when trans kids can begin to get medical assistance in the process of transitioning. Many of the laws, however, of our laws today require equal protection for all, including gays. I remember I have been judged since the change in marital laws have occurred, and it used to be in order to get a license to marry, you need a man and a woman, and as a judge I cannot perform the ceremony without seeing a license. That changed. I still remember the first few weddings I did of same-sex couples, such an exciting time, and when you get to the part where I say, and by the authority vested in me and pursuant to the laws of the state of New York, and then pronounce them married. Very exciting time. So there's lots of laws that today say to folks who are LGBTQ, our society, at least in some places, respect you and recognize that you are not an aberration, that you do deserve to live, and that you are entitled to equal opportunities along with everybody else. It does happen, however, that there are, the law is one thing, and individuals' encounters with other individuals are another thing, and not everybody is supportive of people who are LGBTQ. So youth attempt suicide more than 3 times as frequently as their heterosexual counterparts. Gay and bisexual men 4 times greater. And homophobia is the key to the cause for that. And these folks experience violence, bullying, family rejection because of sexuality. They internalize society's negative view of homosexuality, and that can lead to depression, mental illness, and unfortunately, suicide. Family support is a key factor. And what we need is organizations like the Gay Alliance that provide mental health services, medical, legal services to to LGBTQ folks. There is a wonderful in Rochester website, rochester.lgbtq.com, and it has all sorts of information and events that are supportive of folks who are LGBTQ. So hopefully suicides are decreasing, and folks have access now to lots of good information and events and rights. Another issue, mean girls. And I think of, who's the mean girl? Frass, the girl who works she was head of or involved with Human Services at Hastings, where Elizabeth and Calvin both work. So she, among her meanness, and she was really mean, she saw Elizabeth in Calvin's lab soon after his death. She was there and looking over things and going through his stuff and being very sad within days of his death. And Frass comes in and sees her and sees that she's still grieving and is very sad. Frass unaffected by the sadness and the mourning that Elizabeth was going through, and says things like, "You had an unusual relationship with with Calvin." Remember, they were not married, and at the time they were living together. That was known, and at Hastings, and at the time that was taboo. So she commented about the unusual relationship. She says, and then she says, "Of course, I have nothing against your, proclivities. I'm not making a moral judgment." And of course, she was making a very moral judgment. It happens that Frask's boyfriend was enamored with Elizabeth, which caused Frask to find Elizabeth, in the book it says, hateable. And Frask says to her, again, on these 2 days after Calvin's death, whether Mr. Evans was getting milk for free doesn't mean his untimely death hurts you less. And then she said, "But you can't ride on his coattails anymore." She was 33, and you may remember she had followed every path to promise to get to a promotion. She did the bidding for her male bosses always, and instead that promotion went to a male who was 21 years old. So she is a very unhappy person. It happens, and there are articles and books out on how to manage mean girls at work. And there is a book on the subject, Mean Girls at Work, How to Stay Professional When Things Get Personal. And it's written by a Catherine Crowley, a New York Times bestseller author. And they say that she says there are lessons to navigate what she calls toxic females, and these are important skills. Why do they do it? Why are mean girls mean? And the answer is given that they have their own insecurities, they're jealous, and competition and envy. If you recently achieved a success at work, you unfortunately may have a target on your back for mean girls. The advice that's given is stay clear of them, don't engage them, view them as people who are suffering, making it easier to bear their insults and rude behavior. Be direct with them. Suggest discussing the problem rather than backstabbing. Document the behavior that is abusive and discuss with the supervisor. And surround yourself with people who are supportive. My experience is that women are true allies. You can form common alliances at work, at your church, a mosque, or synagogue. Indispensable affiliations to a successful career are those relationships with women and as well as with men. But there are those apparently mean girls out there. Hopefully soon they'll learn that being nice and having colleagues who are supportive rather than alienating others around you will limit their numbers. But there are books and articles on how to deal with them should you find that necessary. Sexual harassment. So this was clearly a theme throughout the book. Donati, the boss at Hastings, tried to bed Elizabeth, tried to, you may remember, destroy her self-esteem, kept telling her that she's not smart, thought that he could then encourage her to have sexual relations with him and take her away from Calvin. Her advisor for her master's, that really was such a gross violation of what the relationship between a faculty member and a student should be, but not so very out of the norm for the time that it occurred. You may remember she was in the lab late at night, the advisor came in, he locked the door, and he tried to rape her, and she responded with the pencil, stabbed him with a pencil. And then the security guard came, and they took the side, security guards took the side of the professor and not her, which is what kept so many women quiet about sexual harassment for so long, that they believed that the man was powerful, had friends in high places, and objecting was not only not going to be believed, but would hurt their career. And indeed, as a result of the encounter with that supervisor, Elizabeth lost her admission to the PhD program. And then there was the event, the circumstance with the head guy at the TV station. She went to have a private meeting with him, and he tried to force himself sexually on her. And then, of course, Flask's abuser. Eventually, we learned that Flask, too, had been the victim of sexual harassment, of attempted assault, and as a result, her career was stymied. So sexual harassment, there used to be much more prevalent than it was today. There were legions of lawsuits when women first went into the workforce, particularly in work sites where men congregated. So police, fire, they were often unwelcoming to women who wanted to pursue those careers. The law of sexual harassment developed, has been used against many companies. Companies have paid big bucks as a result of findings that indeed sexual harassment has occurred, and that has prompted companies to reinforce to their workers that sexual harassment will not be tolerated. If you like your job, then find a woman that you like who's not at this company. The two types of sexual harassment, one is quid pro quo and one is hostile environment. Quid pro quo is where a boss says, if you want that promotion or you want that particular week off between for Christmas and New Year's, you must have sex with me. Quid pro quo, sex is the requirement in order to get the promotion or get the special training or the particular time off. The other kind is a hostile environment, and this involves verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature that isn't, you have to have sex with me in order to get what you want, but it makes the woman feel very uncomfortable because of the environment. It may be that sexual jokes are permitted, are allowed and thought to be funny and laughed at, or there may be pin-ups that are all around the workplace, or there may be brushing against a woman and demeaning comments about what she appears, how she appears, what she's wearing. Sexual jokes or innuendos. The conduct must be unwelcomed. It can, initially, when sexual harassment first began, was only man to woman. Now it can be woman to man, because women, of course, are in many supervisory positions. It can be man to man and woman to woman. In August of 2019, In addition to the prohibitions on sexual harassment, new New York legislation added a number of requirements relating to sexual harassment. It enlarged the legally actionable sexual harassment conduct that constitutes sexual harassment by eliminating severe and pervasive requirement. So it used to be in order for a woman to be, or anybody, it could be a guy, to be successful suing for sexual harassment, you had to show that the action was severe and pervasive. No longer is that so. There used to be a statute of limitations, a time period within which you could sue, that was 1 year. That has been expanded to 3. It used to be sexual harassment laws didn't apply if the company was small and had, I think 4 was the number, 4 or fewer employees. Now it applies to all. There's also limitations on restricting the victim from talking about any settlement that has occurred. And every employer is mandated to have sexual harassment training, and there are training videos that are available to employers that have been developed by the Division of Human Rights of New York. Every employer must mandate that training for all workers.